NIL versus the transfer portal and unintended consequences. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, back in Louisville after what it was a tremendous week in Central New York. We have scheduled Phil Steele. All right, that should be Thursday's episode. And we're going to do a Media Days preview with the guys from Sunbelt Syndicate. That should be early next week to sort of let it build up for the whole week. Now, we're going to record that, I think, on Wednesday. So if something happens in between, say levy. All right. So this, the first two segments are really going to be leading to one thing, and then we'll talk about nothing new in the Sunbelt as of just yet. All right. So we got a new transfer portal. How about that? All right. Over the break, we hadn't talked about that just yet. And quickly, we're going to hold off for a few days on the Sunbelt East coaches. All right. I've got that ready to go. But I wanted to talk about this because I didn't notice this until, in this very specific situation, that I wanted to discuss because it's personal and it's going to be larger towards the Sunbelt here in a minute. But we did get some portal news, if you will, and I seem to have lost it here. Ross Dellinger put it out there that there is a new portal. And kind of along the lines of kids getting cut is kind of the way it seems. There is a new one-time transfer portal. NCAA Committee on Legislative Relief has issued a waiver to permit athletes who schools place a designated student athlete list to enter the portal July 7th through August 5th. DSAs are grandfathered in athletes exempt from roster limits. I'm bringing this up mostly because actually a kid from Syracuse got in there, and it is just another portal thing that we don't really need. Actually, a highly recruited kid went in there. Doesn't really matter his name. His name is King Joseph Edwards. He was highly touted last year's class, and these things don't last very long at all. All right. In this focus, I do want to talk about which one do we have to rein in more, because I don't have an issue with the players getting paid. I really don't. There are some unintended consequences that we're going to go over, but it's about time that they got paid. My issue is the portal. I don't have a kid. I'm a problem if a kid wants to transfer once. I do have an issue if they want to transfer 5 times. All right. You literally can go to about 7 different schools now. All right. If you want to go to 2 JCs, redshirt 1 year and at a 4-year school, then transfer again, you can transfer all those years. All right. You can transfer a bunch. Somewhere along the way, in fact, you can you transfer twice in 1 year? Right? Like if you transfer, I don't even know that. Please let me know. Like if you transfer after the fall semester and you don't like where you're standing after spring ball, can you transfer again? I'm pretty sure you can, right? Nothing's stopping you, right? There's no limit on how often you transfer. And I just don't think that's good for anybody. I don't think it's good for the kids. Certainly not good for the programs. It's not good for the coaches. I do believe you should be able to transfer once without any penalty. Bad decision. It didn't work out. You're on the bench. Whatever the reason is, you don't need a good reason. You get one free transfer. All right. The other time you get a free transfer is if the coach leaves. Coach gets fired. Coach takes another job. You do get one free transfer. All right. Now, sad to say, I would put a limit on the coaches taking the players. That is what I would do. So that used to be, especially if you're in conference, you would have to sit out 2 years and you would lose eligibility. I think back in my day, great Cody, if you sat out, you would lose eligibility if you transferred within the same conference. The idea was not to do that. So I have much more of an issue than some of the players that are going to make a few bucks. And there's very few players doing that, right? You do have the Texas Tech softball player, and now you do have the Texas Tech football player who just signed for like $5.1 million over 3 years. All right. There is a Syracuse, Calvin Russell is reportedly wide receiver who never apparently did an official visit to Syracuse, but had been there a few times. He's in the over $4 million range. All right. Not per year, but total. And remember, the $20 million that's for everybody annually. So that's for the football, for the basketball, for the baseball, for some players, lacrosse, track and field, women's basketball, soccer, whatever it may, field hockey, softball, whatever it may be. That $20 million encompasses what the schools can pay. And I'm sure that's just Power 5. G5 is not coming up with an extra $20 million. All right. And so I feel that we need to get some more authority is the wrong word. We got to get lesser transfer portals compared to adding the one more that we did. We need to get more of a rein in on the transfer portal. It's got to be one, and you can only do it a certain amount of times. Again, if you want to transfer one time, you get that. And if the coach leaves, you can do that. But other than that, you got to sit out a year, and maybe it costs you a year of eligibility, all right, after your free pass. And that would slow things down a little bit. All right. In terms of making a few bucks, again, it's just like anything else. There's going to be a few people who make a lot of money. And everybody else is not. All right. Usually the quarterback. Bryce Underwood, for example, at Michigan, making a lot of money. And we'll see what happens there. On a side note, the unintended consequences is, do you end up playing Bryce Underwood too soon? Because as good as Jameis Winston was, as good as Johnny Manziel was, they were redshirt freshmen. If Bryce Underwood is pressed to play as a true freshman because he's making some money, that could be unintended consequences. All right. That's called a segue. Speaking of unintended, so let me know what you guys think. Which one do we want to rein in more? NIL or transfer portal? I don't have a problem with guys making some money. There's very few people that are making that high-end money. We really need to do the transfer portal. Also, this will never happen, but if a Power 4 squad takes a G5 player, the Power 4 squad has to pay the G5 school, whatever that is. Right? Of course, that'll never happen, but that's also an idea. Now the part of unintended consequences, that'll come up next because this part will be personal and it's going to end up affecting Sunbelt schools. We'll do that after I tell you about Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a big group to come with you. Game Time makes it possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop closer you get to the first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and the lowest price guaranteed. That takes worrying out of buying. Been through the story before, folks. You guys know it. Went to opening day of Cincinnati Reds baseball. They used to have that ceremonial first day, opening day. It's a huge party, massive crowd, and I waited for as long as I could. I ended up using Game Time, and I got a ticket at the last possible moment. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College, for $20 off. Download Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. We are 2 weeks and counting to the Sunbelt Media Days. Looking forward to that. All right, unintended consequences. We're going way back to the Wayback Machine when little David Schultz was in college, doing a presentation, I think in speech class. And I'm not sure how much the professor was a big sports fan, but I did a presentation on the profitability of athletics department. And he called me out on it. He's like, athletics departments are not profitable. They spend all of their money to not be profitable. Now, today, there are a few handfuls, certainly at least one, maybe two, but certainly one of the profitability teams used to be LSU. They turned a profit. And that's not necessarily a big one, but they always used to show a profit. And so he's like, they don't do that. They do that on purpose because they spend all the money, whether it's going to the coaches, the administrators, the facilities. They're going to spend every single dollar. They're not there to turn a profit. They're there to spend their money. All right. So now, guess what happens? They got this house settlement deal, and they got to come up with an extra $20 million. Well, guess what's not going to happen? They're not going to start cutting coaches' salaries. They're not going to start cutting high-end administrator salaries. They're going to start firing people. And there was more than a few universities that did it, but one that caught my eye, it was actually right before I left, I believe, was University of Arkansas. 10% cut across the board. And I reached out to a friend of mine to make sure he was okay. And he's like, well, they'll catch up to me eventually. He's all right for now. That's not where it got personal. Not quite yet. All right. But they're firing people who are making $50,000, $60,000. Not quite living paycheck to paycheck, but not people who are rolling in the dough by any stretch of the imagination. The problem with that is this is the University of Arkansas. All right. Now, what happens when it gets down to the Sun Belt? Because obviously the Sun Belt isn't coming up with $20 million extra, right? They're not going to do that. They may get to 5 or 10 million, but where are they coming up with that money? Just knowing some of these places like South Alabama and the Cajuns, the SIDs are overworked as it is. All right. They work too much as it is between September and June. I know that's what they signed up for, but they need help. They need more help. And now they're going to get less help. So this is where it becomes personal. The University of Arkansas fired Kevin Trainer. I believe he's had, one or two jobs his entire life. I know what his first job was. It was with the National Baseball Congress World Series in Wichita, Kansas, because that's where I worked. I worked for the Wichita Wranglers. I was the intern for the Wichita Wranglers. Kevin Trainer was the intern for the National Baseball Congress World Series. All right. So he oversaw that with the administrators there. So he came in and did that. Since that time, he's worked for the University of Arkansas. The AD for University of Arkansas didn't go to the coaches and say, if you want us to pay the players, everybody in this room has to take a pay cut, and we're going to look to cut some of our budget. And then see if we can, see where we can come up with some more cuts before we start firing people. The AD of Arkansas makes $1.5 million. You think you can get by on $1 million? What about Coach Calipari? Makes $8 million. Can he get by on $7 million? All right. They could have cut some salary. All right. Not to mention Kenny Payne's making $900,000. We saw how good a coach he was at the University of Louisville. There was places to cut before we started firing people. Now, Kevin's been around a long time. All right. He will not be out of work for very long. He may end up finding a better job that pays more, that has less hours. Talk about unintended consequences. He may find himself not working 60 to 70 hours a week and all of a sudden having weekends off. And instead of worrying what's going on during Razorbacks games, he may be enjoying the suites in Razorback games. But that's my point, is that instead of cutting where you can cut before you start firing people, they started firing people because the people who make the money ain't giving the money back. And that's going to trickle down to the Sun Belt. When they start rolling out the dough for the players, they're going to cut already sparse staffs. And that is some of the unintended consequences, admittedly, that I did not see coming. These places have a lot of money. And I think it was Iowa State. I mean, it wasn't Iowa, but it was Iowa State. They said they were pretty good for a couple of years. They get into that 20 million, they don't have it. They're going to be hurt. So we'll see where this goes over the next few years, because as crazy as, think where we are, it's 2025. Season's coming up. Think where we were, forget COVID. Think where we were right before that, 2019 season. All right. Joe Burrow and LSU, and think how far we've come since then. All right. And it's almost to the point of spiraling out of control. And the problem is, all right, nobody is in control at the NCAA. Right now, it appears somebody like Greg Sankey is in control. And because the SEC is so successful, he is in no rush to change what's going on. All right. Outside of getting more SEC teams into the playoff, college football playoff. But we wish Kevin all of the best. Again, that's somebody that I've known since 1992. All right. And he's had a great career. Obviously done very well at University of Arkansas. And he will land on his feet. I have no doubt about it. All right. And again, he may end up finding a better job, paying more, less work. And all of a sudden he may, when was the last time he actually enjoyed a weekend between September and June? Probably never. It would be one of those times. He's always working. So we wish him the best. But something like that is going to happen to the Sun Belt. And the Sun Belt already has limited staff members as it is. All right, let's take a timeout. We'll come back. And again, it feels like the Sun Belt's slow playing everything. All right, we'll talk about that right after we continue to thank everybody. All right, we're up over 2,200 subscribers. Slowed down a little bit. Did take a break. We got to see if we can get people coming back after the holiday weekend. Still averaging about 4 or 5 subscribers a day. That's what we need to get to 2,500 by the end of August. And I think with the media days coming up and Phil Steele coming up, and I think we're going to get there. We're still on a pretty good average so far since the beginning of the month. So we're pretty good with that. And I just got to thank you. You guys are fantastic, getting more feedback, more comments. Views even on a Monday was pretty good. And again, we'll get to the East quarterbacks later on in the week. Don't think I forgot about that, but I wanted to get to this NIL versus transfer portal and unintended consequences before I forgot about it. And the East quarterbacks will still be there. So don't forget to continue to subscribe. Don't forget about the audio podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. They are there to be listened to as well. Working out, cleaning up the place, in the car, on the way to work. It is a big, big help. So I do continue to thank all of the supporters. I do appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. All right. Again, no news. I did not hear any news following the holiday weekend on Monday in terms of what the Sunbelt is thinking about doing. I certainly didn't see anything from the national writers, Thamel, Dellinger, McMurphy. Did not hear anything from my source as well. All right. And it just feels like the longer this goes, and it's going on, it's going on a long time. Are we 4 weeks into this? Let me see if I have a date. And when I can find out when I was originally told about this. Because it's been a long time. Because it's been a minute. No, I can't. Okay. No, we can't. Okay. So it's almost been a month since we did that. I guess we could look on the Twitter when it was. It's been at least 3 weeks, if not a month, since we reported that Sunbelt reached out to ECU and that Louisiana Tech has been blocked. All right. Still being blocked. All right. I think the only I don't know if it's changed, but again, Sean Fox seemed to indicate on his radio show that Keith Gill is trying to convince the holdouts to vote La Tech in. Right? That has not changed. And I am told that if that happens, you're going to have unintended consequences as well. Although I'm not sure how unintended that is, because that seems like it's, if I'm being told that's the case, then other people are being told that's the case. That's not a big secret. Basically, people are saying, do not bring Louisiana Tech in. That's what is being indicated to me. All right. And it feels like they're being, the Sunbelt is being deliberate in their deliberations for this instead of overreacting. And I mean, we're getting, people want Sam Houston and Eastern Kentucky. And I mean, goodness gracious, if that's where the Sunbelt is, I mean, people don't even want, Middle Tennessee State brings outside of Nashville. I mean, some of these places, people looking at FIU, they don't care about FIU in Miami. Sometimes they don't even care about Miami in Miami. They certainly don't care about FIU in Miami. I mean, let's not go crazy on some of these schools, all right? But it would be interesting, and I guess we're going to wait for a few more weeks. It would be nice for something to happen before we get down there so we can talk to them about it, because all we're going to get is we've been in contact with some schools, and schools have been in contact with us, but we can't talk about anything before it becomes official. Like, we have officially invited them, and that hasn't happened yet. That's what's going to be said. You can almost anticipate that until there's an official invite, which would get out in a half a second, right? Those national guys will break that, right? We'll say Shane Metlin. Is it from he does a great job with JMU, DNR Sports, That is the Daily News and Record Sports. And he pointed out, which was, good job by him, the Big Ten was the Big 11 for over 20 years. Now they were one division. So when they added Penn State, they were an odd number of teams for a long time. Well, maybe it wasn't 20 years, but it was a long time before they added Nebraska. Maybe it was 20 years. Before they added Nebraska, they were an odd number of teams. So it's not mandatory that you add another team. I personally, and you guys know my belief on this, my sentiment anyways, that they should bring in 3 more teams. But patience may prove to be more prudent in this case, because again, the schools you're bringing in don't necessarily. Now, Sam Houston's pretty good. Sam Houston's a good football program, and maybe if you bring them in, their facilities get upgraded. All right. Seen some interesting comments on Middle Tennessee. I'm not going to say I know anything about Middle Tennessee State. I don't. But if you're trying to bring in Eastern Kentucky because they're a good rivalry for Marshall, that's not going to work. That's not bringing in anybody. Come on. So, again, nothing new from the Sun Belt following the holiday weekend. I'm not sure we anticipated anything. But we shall see over the next couple of weeks if we get anything before Sun Belt Media Days, which is, again, 2 weeks from today. All right. And again, those national media writers aren't saying anything new. They're getting their comments or sources from the Louisiana Tech side. Admittedly, my source is from the other side. Admittedly. All right. That's easy to see. Or it's from the conference side. All right. So it's not difficult to see. But again, I still stand by what I say. If they wanted Louisiana Tech in, they'd be in. That's not difficult to, right? This would have been a done deal Tuesday after Texas State went in. It's been a week since Texas State went in or more, and Louisiana Tech is still not in. So something is prohibiting Louisiana Tech from joining. All right. I don't think anything has changed since that report came out. So we'll see if something does change, all right, over the next week or so. All right. Again, we could be doing quarterbacks for Wednesday. We do have Phil Steele joining us on Thursday, and the Sunbelt Syndicate will do a crossover episode previewing Sunbelt Media Days. That won't be until Monday. So we do have things to look forward to. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thanks for the support. All right. Continue to subscribe. Also, those audio podcasts, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. You've been watching Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Have a great Tuesday, everybody. We'll talk to you again on a Wednesday.